Kyiv is the capital and most populous city of Ukraine. It is in north-central Ukraine along the Dnieper River. As of 1 January 2021, its population was 2,962,180, making Kyiv the seventh most populous city in Europe. Kyiv is an important industrial, scientific, educational, and cultural center in Eastern Europe. It is home to many high-tech industries, higher education institutions, and historical landmarks. The city has an extensive system of public transport and infrastructure, including the Kyiv Metro. The city's name is said to derive from the name of Kyi, one of its four legendary founders. During its history, Kyiv, one of the oldest cities in Eastern Europe, passed through several stages of prominence and obscurity. The city probably existed as a commercial center as early as the 5th century. A Slavic settlement on the great trade route between Scandinavia and Constantinople, Kyiv was a tributary of the Khazars until its capture by the Vikings in the mid-9th century. Under Varangian rule, the city became a capital of Kievan Ruses, the first East Slavic state. Completely destroyed during the Mongol invasions in 1240, the city lost most of its influence for the centuries to come. It was a provincial capital of marginal importance in the outskirts of the territories controlled by its powerful neighbors, first Lithuania, then Poland and ultimately Russia. The city prospered again during the Russian Empire's Industrial Revolution in the late 19th century. In 1918, after the Ukrainian People's Republic declared independence from Soviet Russia, Kyiv became its capital. From 1921 onwards, Kyiv was a city of Soviet Ukraine, which was proclaimed by the Red Army, and, from 1934, Kyiv was its capital. The city was almost completely ruined during World War II, but quickly recovered in the post-war years, remaining the Soviet Union's third largest city. Following the collapse of the Soviet Union and Ukrainian independence in 1991, Kyiv remained Ukraine's capital and experienced a steady influx of ethnic Ukrainian migrants from other regions of the country. During the country's transformation to a market economy and electoral democracy, Kyiv has continued to be Ukraine's largest and wealthiest city. Its armament-dependent industrial output fell after the Soviet collapse, adversely affecting science and technology, but new sectors of the economy such as services and finance facilitated Kyiv's growth in salaries and investment, as well as providing continuous funding for the development of housing and urban infrastructure. Kyiv emerged as the most pro-Western region of Ukraine. Parties advocating tighter integration with the European Union dominate during elections. The first known humans in the region of Kyiv lived there in the late Paleolithic period. The population around Kyiv during the Bronze Age formed part of the so-called Trypillian culture, as evidenced by artifacts from that culture found in the area. During the early Iron Age, certain tribes settled around Kyiv that practiced land cultivation, husbandry, and trading with the Scythians and ancient states of the northern Black Sea coast. Findings of Roman coins of the 2nd to the 4th centuries suggest trade relations with the eastern provinces of the Roman Empire. The people of the Zarabintsy culture are considered the direct ancestors of the ancient Slavs who later established Kyiv. Notable archaeologists of the area around Kyiv include Vikenty Gvoyka. Scholars continue to debate when the city was founded. The traditional founding date is 482 AD, so the city celebrated its 1500th anniversary in 1982. Archaeological data indicates a founding in the 6th or 7th centuries, with some researchers dating the founding as late as the late 9th century. There are several legendary accounts of the origin of the city. One tells of members of a Slavic tribe, brothers Kyi, the eldest, after whom the city was named, Shchek, and Korov, and their sister Libid, who founded the city. Another legend states that Saint Andrew passed through the area in the 1st century. Where the city is now, he erected a cross, where a church later was built. Since the Middle Ages, an image of Saint Michael has represented the city as well as the duchy. There is little historical evidence pertaining to the period when the city was founded. Scattered Slavic settlements existed in the area from the 6th century, but it is unclear whether any of them later developed into the city. On the Ptolemy world map, there are several settlements indicated along the midstream of Borysthenes, among which is Azagarium, which some historians believe to be the predecessor to Kyiv. However, according to the 1773 Dictionary of Ancient Geography of Alexander McBean, that settlement corresponds to the modern city of Chernobyl. Just south of Azagarium, there is another settlement, Amadoka, which is supposed as the capital of Amadosi people, living in area between marshes of Amadoka in the west and Amadoka Mountains in the east. Another name for Kyiv mentioned in history, the origin of which is not completely clear, is Sambit, which apparently has something to do with the Khazar Empire. The primary chronicle says the residents of Kyiv told Askold there were 3 brothers Kyi, Shchek, and Korov. They founded this town and died, and now we are staying and paying taxes to their relatives the Khazars. In his book De Administrando Imperio, Constantine Porphyrogenitus mentions a caravan of small cargo boats which assembled annually and writes, they come down the river Dnieper and assemble at the strong point of Kyiv, also called Sambatas. At least 3 Arabic-speaking 10th century geographers who traveled the area mention the city of Zenbat as the chief city of the Russes. Among them are Ahmed ibn Rusta, Abu Sa'ad Gardezi, and an author of the Hudud al-Alam. The texts of those authors were discovered by Russian Orientalist Alexander Tumansky. The etymology of Sambat has been argued by many historians, including Grigory Ulinsky, Nikolay Karamzin, Jan Pataki, Nikolay Lambin, Joachim Leluel, Gudbrander Vigfussen. The primary chronicles state that at some point during the late 9th or early 10th century Askold and Dur, who may have been of Viking or Varangian descent, ruled in Kyiv. They were murdered by Oleg of Novgorod in 882, but some historians, such as Emeljan Pritsak and Konstantin Zuckerman, dispute that, arguing that Khazar rule continued as late as the 920s. Other historians suggest that Magyar tribes ruled the city between 840 and 878 before migrating with some Khazar tribes to the Carpathian Basin. The primary chronicles also mention movement of Hungarians past Kyiv. To this day in Kyiv exists a place known as Uhursk Urichich, which is better known as Askold's grave. According to the aforementioned scholars, the building of the fortress of Kyiv was finished in 840 under the leadership of Kek, Ksak, and Jerub, three brothers, possibly members of the Tarjan tribe. The three names appear in the Kyiv Chronicle as Ki, Shchek, and Korov, and may be not of Slavic origin, as Russian historians have always struggled to account for their meanings and origins. According to Hungarian historian Viktor Padanyi, their names were inserted into the Kyiv Chronicle in the 12th century, and they were identified as Old Russian mythological heroes. The city of Kyiv stood on the trade route between the Varangians and the Greeks. In 968 the nomadic Pechenegs attacked and then besieged the city. By 1000 AD the city had a population of 45,000. In March 1169, Grand Prince Andrei Bogolyubsky of Vladimir Suzdal sacked Kyiv, leaving the old town and the prince's hall in ruins. He took many pieces of religious artwork including the Theotokos of Vladimir icon from nearby Vyshegorod. In 1203, Prince Rurik Rostislavich and his Kipchak allies captured and burned Kyiv. In the 1230s, the city was besieged and ravaged several times by different Rus princes. The city had not recovered from these attacks when, in 1240, the Mongol invasion of Russes, led by Batu Khan, completed the destruction of Kyiv. These events had a profound effect on the future of the city and on the East Slavic civilization. Before Bogolyubsky's pillaging, Kyiv had a reputation as one of the largest cities in the world, with a population exceeding 100,000 in the beginning of the 12th century. In the early 1320s, a Lithuanian army led by Grand Duke Gediminas defeated a Slavic army led by Stanislav of Kyiv at the battle on the Irpin River and conquered the city. According to the all-Ukrainian census, the population of Kyiv in 2001 was 2,611,300. According to the census, some 1,393,000, 53.3%, were female and 1,219,000, 46.7%, were male. Comparing the results with the previous census, 1989, shows the trend of population aging which, while prevalent throughout the country, is partly offset in Kyiv by the inflow of working-age migrants. Some 1,069,700 people had higher or completed secondary education, a significant increase of 21.7% since 1989. Both Ukrainian and Russian are commonly spoken in the city. Approximately 75% of Kyiv's population responded Ukrainian to the 2001 census question on their native language, roughly 25% responded Russian. According to a 2006 survey, Ukrainian is used at home by 23% of Kyivans, 52% use Russian, and 24% switch between both. In the 2003 sociological survey, when the question "What language do you use in everyday life?" was asked, 52% said mostly Russian, 32% both Russian and Ukrainian in equal measure, 14% mostly Ukrainian, and 4.3% exclusively Ukrainian. According to the census of 1897, of Kyiv's approximately 240,000 people, approximately 56% of the population spoke the Russian language, 23% spoke the Ukrainian language, 13% spoke Yiddish, 7% spoke Polish, and 1% spoke the Belarusian language. A 2015 study by the International Republican Institute found that the languages spoken at home in Kyiv were Ukrainian, 27%, Russian, 32%, and an equal combination of Ukrainian and Russian, 40%. The Jews of Kyiv are first mentioned in a 10th century letter. The Jewish population remained relatively small until the 19th century. A series of pogroms was carried out in 1882 and another in 1905. On the eve of World War I, the city's Jewish population was over 81,000. In 1939 there were approximately 224,000 Jews in Kyiv, some of whom fled the city ahead of the German invasion of the Soviet Union that began in June 1941. On 29 and 30 September 1941, nearly 34,000 Kyivan Jews were massacred at Babi Yar by the German Wehrmacht, SS, Ukrainian Auxiliary Police, and local collaborators. Since introducing a visa-free regime for EU member states and Switzerland in 2005, Ukraine has seen a steady increase in the number of foreign tourists visiting the country. Before the 2008-09 recession, the average annual growth in the number of foreign visits in Kyiv was 23% over a three-year period. In 2009, a total of 1.6 million tourists stayed in Kyiv hotels, of whom almost 259,000 were foreigners. After UEFA Euro 2012, the city became the most popular destination for European tourists. A record number of 1.8 million foreign tourists was registered then, along with about 2.5 million domestic tourists. More than 850,000 foreign tourists visited Kyiv in the first half of 2018, as compared to 660,000 tourists over the same period in 2013. As of 2018, the hotel occupancy rate from May to September averages 45–50%. Hostels and 3-star hotels are approximately 90% full, 4-star hotels 65–70%. 6 5-star hotels average 50–55% occupancy. Ordinary tourists generally come from May to October, and business tourists from September to May. As with most capital cities, Kyiv is a major administrative, cultural, and scientific center of the country. It is the largest city in Ukraine in terms of both population and area and enjoys the highest levels of business activity. On 1 January 2010, there were around 238,000 business entities registered in Kyiv. Official figures show that between 2004 and 2008, Kyiv's economy outstripped the rest of the country's, growing by an annual average of 11.5%. Following the global financial crisis that began in 2007, Kyiv's economy suffered a severe setback in 2009, with gross regional product contracting by 13.5% in real terms. Although a record high, the decline in activity was 1.6 percentage points smaller than that for the country as a whole. The economy in Kyiv, as in the rest of Ukraine, recovered somewhat in 2010 and 2011. Kyiv is a middle-income city, with prices comparable to many mid-size American cities.